Okay, so this time you've really brought us some interesting stuff. I mean, a disclaimer from a novel, and then like a summary of the novel itself. And the novel is called Un exil vers l'enfer, which translates to Exile to Hell.
Okay.
And it was interesting right off the bat because the mission, sort of the core of what it seems like we're trying to understand here is really kind of laid out for us. And it's this idea of the raw human experience within these perilous journeys that they take, and this is all framed within the world of fiction, but it's made very clear in the source material that it is rooted in, real world experiences and research and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's a really fascinating sort of springboard into this whole thing. So let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Who is it that we encounter? Who is the central figure in this narrative?
So the story centers around Pierre, a young man from Cameroon, with his sights set on reaching the United States.
Oh.
And importantly, he's not alone in this. Sharra and other fellow travelers become, key individuals in his unfolding story.
Yeah, and right away, that the summary hits you with this really powerful and unsettling statement, and it says, "Hope is a luxury and exile a necessity."
Right.
It's like, wow, that really like reframes how you think about someone undertaking such a drastic journey, right? I mean, it's not a choice made lightly.
Not at all. I think that phrase encapsulates the driving force behind these migrations. It suggests a context where staying put offers no viable future, where the hardships at home outweigh the immense risks of the journey itself.
Yeah.
The summary really emphasizes that Pierre's journey through Latin America is clandestine, highlighting that this isn't, a documented or supported form of travel, but rather a hidden and often dangerous undertaking.
So what does that initial part of the journey look like for Pierre and his companions?
So the narrative begins with them crossing Brazil and navigating the complexities of the Amazon. What's immediately concerning is the mention of exploitation by mafias.
Oh.
This suggests that from the very beginning, these individuals, already in a vulnerable position, are being targeted for their desperation.
Yeah.
This speaks to a disturbing pattern where vulnerability is immediately met with predatory opportunism, effectively turning these individuals into commodities right from the outset of their journey.
Yeah, it's a brutal reality to confront so early in their story, and it doesn't ease up as they move forward.
No, the challenges only compound. The summary details their clandestine entries into Ecuador and Colombia as further significant hurdles.
And just to be clear for people, listening, clandestine entries, meaning, they're not going through proper,
Yes.
documentation or checkpoints.
Okay. Yeah.
They're having to rely on, smugglers and facing increased risks at every new border.
Absolutely.
But it feels like, those initial stages, as difficult as they are almost a prelude to an even more harrowing part of the journey that the summary really emphasizes.
Yeah. You're at the Darien Gap.
Mm.
The dense and treacherous jungle that forms the border between Colombia and Panama is unequivocally described as the true hell.
Yeah.
And this isn't just hyperbole. The summary goes on to outline the horrific realities they face there.
And they're stark and deeply disturbing. We're
Yeah.
talking about the constant threat of death, sexual violence, robbery, even summary executions.
Right.
And then added to that is the sheer physical ordeal, the relentless exhaustion, gnawing hunger, and just an overwhelming sense of despair. I mean, it's a battle for survival on every conceivable level.
Yeah.
It's, hearing these details, deaths, rape, robberies, it's almost unbearable to imagine the psychological toll.
Yeah.
The summary mentions despair as overwhelming. How does one even begin to cope with such sustained trauma?
I think the human psyche has an incredible capacity for endurance, often fueled by the hope of reaching safety. However, the constant exposure to extreme violence and the struggle for basic survival in the Darien undoubtedly leaves deep and lasting scars, both physical and emotional. It's a testament to their resilience that anyone emerges from that environment.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is the dual threat they face, not only the unforgiving natural environment, but also the very real danger posed by other humans.
Given the overwhelming brutality that you've described in the Darien Gap, it's almost hard to imagine any positive human interaction, yet the summary suggests otherwise, mentioning significant encounters and moments of solidarity. Can you elaborate on these glimmers of humanity amidst the horror?
So despite the pervasive violence, these moments of solidarity highlight the fundamental human need for connection and support, especially in the face of shared adversity. Acts of kindness, sharing meager resources, or simply offering comfort can become lifelines in such a brutal environment. These encounters likely provide crucial psychological sustenance, reminding individuals of their shared humanity when everything else seems to strip it away.
Yeah, and within this incredibly difficult journey, we also see this emergence of a personal connection, the fragile but tenacious love between Pierre and Sharra.
Right.
That offers a small but significant beacon of hope, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This relationship underscores the human need for intimacy and connection, even in the most dehumanizing circumstances. It suggests that even when stripped of almost everything, the desire for love and companionship persists and can act as a powerful motivator for survival.
So against all these incredible odds, Pierre and two of his companions eventually reach the USA, but the journey's end doesn't necessarily mean the end of their challenges?
No. The summary states that upon arrival, they are immediately placed in detention.
Okay.
This highlights the often harsh reality that awaits migrants even after surviving such a treacherous journey. The legal and bureaucratic hurdles can be just as daunting as the physical ones.
And the outcomes for Pierre and his companions differ significantly, reflecting the complexities of the immigration system. We hear about the deportation of Frank and Kenneth, while Pierre's situation takes a different trajectory.
Yes. Pierre is eventually accepted into the territory after a lengthy 7 months. Although it's important to note that his asylum process wasn't even complete.
And just so we're clear on that, the asylum process being this, legal procedure by which individuals seeking refuge can apply for protection in another country based on fears of persecution in their home country.
Right.
So he's accepted, but without this process being finalized, suggesting a precarious and uncertain legal status even after gaining entry.
Absolutely.
And even with this acceptance, the personal cost for Pierre seems immense. It's not the triumphant arrival one might initially imagine.
Far from it. The summary details the significant personal toll. The loss of his marriage plans other unspecified failures and a profound sense of despair. This underscores the deep and lasting impact of such an experience, regardless of the final legal outcome. The trauma and loss experienced along the way leave indelible marks.
Yet despite all of this suffering and loss, Pierre's described in a really striking way as an example of abnegation, empathy, and a true example of curiosity.
Right.
That's a powerful characterization given everything he has endured.
It is. It suggests that even in the face of unimaginable hardship, fundamental human qualities like selflessness, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, and a desire to learn and explore can not only persist, but perhaps even be strengthened. This speaks volumes about the resilience of the human spirit.
Pierre's journey, as depicted in this summary, really brings several critical themes into sharp focus for us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The summary explicitly highlights several key themes that are essential to understanding this experience. Foremost is the harsh reality of exile and illegal immigration, the desperation that forces individuals to leave their homes, and the brutal conditions they face on their journeys.
And closely intertwined with that is this pervasive theme of exploitation.
Right.
It sounds like these vulnerable individuals are targeted and taken advantage of at multiple stages of their journey.
That's a crucial point. The exploitation isn't limited to organized criminal groups like cartels and smugglers. The summary even hints that it can occur among the migrants themselves, suggesting a breakdown of social cohesion under extreme duress, where survival instincts can sometimes override empathy.
But then running counter to this darkness is this powerful theme of resilience and the sheer will to survive against overwhelming odds.
Exactly. The narrative emphasizes the constant struggle against the elements, against debilitating physical and mental exhaustion, and against the ever-present threat of human violence. Their ability to persevere in the face of such adversity is truly remarkable.
Another key theme that emerges is this disillusionment, the stark and often tragic contrast between the dream of a better life and the brutal reality of the journey itself and what awaits them at the destination.
This is a recurring element in many accounts of migration. The idealized vision of a place like the United States as a land of opportunity often clashes sharply with the immense sacrifices required to get there, the harsh reception they may face, and the uncertain future that awaits them.
And it's not just about the external challenges, is it? The summary also touches on the internal dynamics within these groups of travelers, the cultural and identity tensions that can arise among such a diverse group of people brought together by circumstance.
Yes, the migrants often come from varied backgrounds, speak different languages, and hold differing beliefs. These differences can sometimes lead to friction and conflict, adding another layer of complexity to their already precarious situation.
But as we discussed earlier, even amidst all the hardship and potential conflict, there's that enduring thread of humanity, the love between Pierre and Sharra, those moments of shared solidarity.
Right. This theme underscores the fundamental importance of human connection, especially in times of crisis. These bonds can provide vital emotional support, a sense of belonging and a shared sense of purpose that can help individuals endure unimaginable suffering.
Now let's turn our attention to the disclaimer at the beginning of the novel itself. What does this tell us about the author's intentions and how we should interpret this narrative?
So the disclaimer explicitly states that the novel is a work of fiction. It emphasizes that the events, characters, and locations depicted are products of the author's imagination and should not be taken as factual representations of real-life events or individuals.
Yeah, it's, a fairly standard inclusion in fictional works, but in this context, dealing with such sensitive and real-world issues, it seems particularly significant.
It is. The author specifically points out that any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead organizations or places is purely coincidental. Furthermore, they state unequivocally that there is no intention to defame, offend, or cause harm to anyone through the narrative. This is an important ethical consideration for the author.
The author also clarifies the primary goal of the book, stating that it aims to explore themes related to immigration and migratory routes, rather than serving as a documentary or a political commentary.
Exactly. While acknowledging that certain descriptions within the novel may have been inspired by real testimonies and research, the disclaimer is clear that these elements have been adapted and fictionalized for the purposes of the story.
Right.
This reinforces the idea that the book should not be read as a factual account of any specific events.
And perhaps one of the most telling points is where the author explicitly states that the book is not intended to encourage illegal immigration. Instead, the stated aim is to promote reflection on fundamental human values and to contribute to a reduction in this phenomenon.
Right. This provides a valuable insight into the author's underlying motivations. It suggests a desire to use the power of fiction to raise awareness about the human cost of these journeys and to encourage critical thinking about the complex factors that drive migration.
And finally, the author includes a standard disclaimer of responsibility for any particular interpretation that readers might draw from the content of the work.
This is a common acknowledgement that readers will inevitably bring their own perspectives, experiences, and biases to their interpretation of the story. It highlights that the author's intended message may not be the only one that resonates with the audience.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, what are the key insights that we can take away from exploring Exile to Hell and its accompanying disclaimer?
I think our exploration reveals a stark depiction of the brutal realities faced by individuals undertaking clandestine migration as portrayed in this fictional narrative. We've seen the constant exposure to danger, the pervasive exploitation they endure, and the immense physical and emotional toll exacted by such a journey. However, the narrative also illuminates the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit, the vital importance of moments of solidarity, and the enduring power of hope, even when confronted with profound despair.
It's a powerful reminder that even fictional narratives, especially those informed by real-world experiences and thorough research, can offer us profound and moving insights into critical global issues and the shared human experience.
Absolutely. By focusing on individual stories set within a larger context, these narratives can foster empathy and understanding in ways that purely factual accounts sometimes cannot.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. Given the author's stated intention to encourage reflection on human values and to contribute to a reduction in illegal immigration, what are the complex ethical considerations that individuals and societies face when grappling with the challenges faced by migrants, even those undertaking these incredibly perilous journeys? It's definitely a multifaceted issue to continue contemplating.